Great. All right, thanks everyone. So we're going to talk about the Performer role-playing simulation platform that you've been using. And we're going to specifically talk today about a new feature that's available in the V3 version of Performer that allows for AI-based coaching, meaning that the big feature of this is that you don't need peer reviews or coach reviews from live coaches, from human coaches, but it'll do the reviews automatically. Our agenda for today is to start with a demo. So I want to show you how this works and kind of show you in the context of Performer. And what I'm going to be demonstrating today is Performer V3, which is the latest version of Performer. It's a slightly newer version, or actually a lot newer version than the current version that you're running, and it is available to you as part of the existing license that AT&T has with Performer. And after I do the demo, I want to talk about why we think this is a useful feature. I mean, there's a lot of interest right now in AI and AI within simulations and basically anything that involves AI. But what I really want to do is focus on why this is going to be beneficial to doing this kind of practice and simulation within this context. And so we have some thoughts about that. And then from there, what I want to do is talk about how do you go about creating AI-based simulations using Performer. And what's nice about this is it's actually very simple to do. It's a very easy, almost identical to the process of creating regular content within Performer. So, but I'll go through that and talk a little bit about how that's done. And then finally, leave room for questions. Although throughout the demonstration today, if you have questions as we go through, I'm happy to answer them, as we advance as well. So it doesn't have to all be done within the meeting directly here. Sorry, sorry, having some trouble with there we go. All right, so let's get started. And the first thing I wanted to do is to walk through a little demo. So I kind of give you a little bit of context for how this all works and going from there. So again, what we're doing right now is signing into V3 version of Performer. So this probably looks a little bit different than what you're used to seeing right now. But what I'm going to do is start off with the dashboard, and we have some exercises queued up right now, and the storyline here may be very different from the AT&T usage of Performer. So this is around more of like a leadership topic, but it could be anything. It could be around how do you work with customer service or when customers are calling in. It can be about, emotional intelligence topic, it could be around sales topics or anything else there. But what we've got here is kind of a storyline of some employees, and it's kind of a leadership topic, and it's using this leadership framework, which is kind of a popular or common leadership framework called situation, behavior, impact, where a leader who's working with somebody who's either struggling or it could also be successful, it doesn't have to be someone who's struggling, kind of talks about, what is the situation that occurred, what was the behavior that was observed, and what was the impact on the organization as a consequence of that behavior. So again, a pretty straightforward and popular leadership model that we'll kind of use as content for today to illustrate how this works. All right, so I'm going to start with this person here. I think this is Colleen in our storyline, and we're kind of setting up the beginning of this here, where we've got Colleen didn't show up for work, and she did not call out an update on her calendar, and that caused several missed client calls and a backlog of work. So that's kind of the situation and also the impact there, I guess, or actually the behavior, the situation, behavior, and impact. And it is also an unusual absence for her. So she usually does show up. So what the player is supposed to do here is practice at describing the actual observable behavior and state of the facts. Don't insert opinions or judgments. And then, we're supposed, and this is actually in the middle of this exercise. We're supposed to continue on here. The first thing I'm going to do is just set up my camera, make sure everything is set up the way I want for today. I'm going to put this on the Zoom audio device for the speakers. See, there's some new testing stuff that's in place here too again. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to switch my sound now on so you can hear this really clearly. And I'll put on closed captioning as well so you can kind of see the closed captioning contents here.
Without going into all of the gory details, I literally got food poisoning. My friend and I went out to a bar last night, and I swear it's not what you think at all. I only had one beer, but we both got burgers, and all I can say is the rest of the night we felt horrible. Like, I didn't get any sleep at all. My stomach hurt so bad. And then I woke up this morning just feeling absolutely terrible.
Okay, so that's the setup. And then what I need to do, as usual here, is respond to it. But the first step I'm getting here is expert insights and advice. What I'm getting is advice on what I should be doing here. And it's kind of explaining to me a little bit more about the situation behavior impact model. And it kind of talks about what you should do. And then, here it's giving me some examples. I was concerned that John wasn't able to provide his perspective in the Friday meeting without his team's input. We can't move forward. So this is kind of giving some things around what you should say versus things you don't say, which tends to be too general here, for example. And again, it's just kind of framing it up a little bit. And so now as a learner, I'm going to go through and I'm going to do my best to respond here. And I'm going to go ahead and record a response. And I'll say, Colleen, I understand that things happen like this. People get sick and work needs to be missed sometimes because you're not feeling well. And I'm really sorry that you got sick on Friday. But I did want to point out that, by not showing up and also more importantly, probably not updating your calendar, there were some important things that were missed. There were some client calls that we didn't get to, which was a big problem. And there was a big backlog of work that happened for both myself and your colleagues. I know this is unusual circumstances, but I hope in the future, even when you're sick, that you can work it out so that you, just note on your calendar that you're not going to be able to make it that day. All right. So that's going to be my response here. And I'm going to just continue on. And now we're going to see, it's kind of side by side here, the two videos that are available. One of the things that happens here, by the way, in the new version of Performer is it kind of builds up closed captioning for both of these as well as a transcript. So we'll see that appear in a minute here. And we have this one here of what Colleen said here. And then like the regular version of Performer, when the first steps here is for the learner to answer questions on their own about what they saw and try to decide if they did a good or bad job on these things. So let's go through this. So did I describe the situation that Colleen didn't show up for work unexpectedly in the first part of your response? I think I did an okay job of that. Maybe I did it completely. I clearly and succinctly explained that she didn't show up for work. I think I got that through. Did I describe the actual observable behavior that Colleen did not call out or update her calendar? That also, I think I explained pretty well in my response to her. Did I explain that Colleen's behavior resulted in several missed client calls? I think I did that too. And then finally, did you explain that Colleen's behavior resulted in a backlog of work? So I'm feeling pretty good about my responses here. And notice that as I was going through this too, what I get here is a transcript of what I said, which is actually the first part of the AI response here. So it's using that as part of its ability to do the AI response. This is moving on to the next exercise, and then it would kind of build the AI response in the meantime. But what I'm going to do right now is go over here and wait for this to come up. And what you see now is Performer coach results are ready. And so what's happened here, as I was scoring it and kind of moving on to the next exercise, the coach has reviewed it. And interestingly, the coach liked my response as well as I did. So I got 100% on my score I gave it. And the coach also gave me 100%. That's, obviously very good here. So it says here, did you describe the situation? I gave myself 100% and the coach gave me 100%. And it says the user did mention that Colleen did not show up for work and did not update her calendar, which is a clear description of the situation. This sets the context for the rest of the feedback. So this is what the AI coach is writing based on what was described up here, right? And so, and the coach agrees that I did a good job on that. Here, did you describe the actual observable behavior that Colleen did not call out or update her calendar? I say the user clearly mentioned that Colleen did not show up and did not update her calendar. This observable behavior was described accurately in the context of the situation again. And again, I got a perfect score on it. Did you explain that Colleen's behavior resulted in several missed calls? The user explicitly mentioned that Colleen's absence led to missed client calls. This was clearly stated in the sentence. There were some client calls that I guess I used an here, we didn't get to, which was a big problem. This directly addresses the impact on Colleen's behavior and client calls. And I can see that presumably in the transcript here that I said this somewhere. Anyway, that's in here as well. And then finally, there was resolve a backlog of work. It was addressed as well. So in this case, I did a perfect job of it, which is sort of nice. And you can see it gave me a good score overall on this. So that's kind of what it's doing kind of overall. Let's do another one. And in this time, what I'm going to try to do is do a poor job. And maybe I'll give myself a good review, even though I did a poor job. So we'll give that a shot here. Did someone have a question? I can't see anyone right now while I'm recording. Okay, I'll keep going. All right, so now we have a new situation. And this situation is a little bit similar to the one we had before. It's actually quite similar. And again, this is just meant for demo purposes today to kind of illustrate how this works. But we're using that same situation behavior impact model here. And it says, Darren is the head of your East Coast sales division and usually has good time management skills. However, he recently missed a major deadline where he failed to get a client's report on Friday, resulting in a backlog of work. And let's just see what this character Darren has to say.
Hi, boss. So what's this all about?
All right, so Darren, it's just kind of starting out. I guess I've called a meeting with him and I want to talk to him about this. And I'm going to say something back to him. And here I'm going to be kind of more general, and I'm going to intentionally try to do a bad job on it, just kind of not explaining things very well. Let's see here. And what happened here again is he missed a deadline. Okay, all right. So let's just go with that. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and record my response. Darren, hey, this was a big mess on Friday. I'm really disappointed that we didn't meet the deadlines that we had planned on, and I just really need to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. So let's see if we can turn things around and make sure that we're making deadlines every time from here on out. All right, so that's not a particularly good response by design. And I have my recording here. I can re-record. I'm going to go ahead and continue. I have, again, my recording here and the starting recording. It's asking, did I describe the situation had a deadline on Friday? I think I did a good job of that. I'm going to go ahead and say that. Did you describe the actual observable behavior that Darren did not get the report out on time? I didn't really do that, but I'm going to give myself kind of a medium score. I probably should get a not at all on this one, but I'm going to give myself a medium score here. Did you explain that Darren's behavior resulted in a backlog of work? Again, I didn't do a good job of that. It's probably a not at all, but I'm going to say I did, a little bit of that. I'm going to kind of be kind to myself here with respect to this score. And so now I'm going to go ahead and continue. Again, what I'm going to do in this case is not go on to the next exercise, but instead go here. And you can see the performer coach results are ready. And we're going to go ahead and review. And we'll kind of see how the overall score came out. So I said, did I describe the situation? And saying that a response mentioned there was a big mess on Friday and that we didn't meet the deadlines that we had planned on. However, it is not explicitly stated that Darren had a deadline on Friday. The situation is implied, but not clearly described. So I got an okay. The coach gave me a lower score than I gave myself on this one. That's clearly true. Let's see what it says here. You described the actual observable behavior that Darren did not get the report out on time. The response mentions that the deadline was missed, but does not clearly describe the specific behavior of Darren not getting the report out on time. The language is vague and lacks a direct reference to the specific action that caused the issue. So it did give me a similar score here, I guess because it's saying the deadline was missed here as a possibility. And on this one, where I said a backlog of work, it did give me a not at all response here. It says the user's response did not clearly explain the specific impact of Darren's missed deadline. The response mentioned disappointment and the need to avoid such issues in the future, but failed to specify that the missed deadline resulted in a backlog of work. So again, giving more detail on here and providing a score. All right, so that is what the tool is doing and sort of what it looks like from a perspective of a learner running through it and and building results and things like that. And I want to talk a little bit about, as I said at the beginning here, what we think some of the advantages and also maybe a couple disadvantages of this AI approach as opposed to, say, a peer approach or a human coach approach for using Performer here. And so we see a few key advantages to using the AI version of this. And the first one, which we're kind of seeing by me doing this today, you've probably seen Rob and I do demos in the past with this. And the challenge, of course, is that often we're doing two sides of the thing at the same time. Where you're doing a recording and then you're also reviewing somebody, and we'll often have an old recording there that we can use for reviewing. And here, what's neat about this is that this can be delivered to learners without having other people involved. You can just say, go do this on your own. It's going to provide the feedback, and it can be done fully asynchronously and can be provided on demand to learners. So it doesn't need to be done with peers, or you don't need to have that peer review piece. And because of that, because it doesn't need the peer review piece, what we have found is, and this is a very new feature for us. This has just been available in the last couple of months here. But we've found in some of our use of it so far is that it overcomes discomfort with sharing recordings with colleagues. And what we mean by that is, in some situations, people are kind of reluctant to do the recordings because they're like, well, I'm going to be showing this to my peers or other colleagues in my office, and I'm feel a little bit shy about having somebody else review what I've recorded here. And here, because there's no human reviewing it directly, people feel a little bit more comfortable about that. And I don't know if that's something that AT&T is encountering in terms of its usage, but that's sort of a nice feature of this that it helps resolve with it. And interestingly, I think that something that surprised us when we built this out, when we were kind of conceiving of this now several months ago to actually build it out, the AI actually, in many ways, does a better job than human peers do. And what I mean by that is that the kind of written responses that the AI provides are all sort of carefully written. And what we find sometimes is that when we have peer reviews and you're asking them to write something about their peers, they'll often be very short, maybe 2 or 3 word responses in a lot of cases. And it's just the nature of having to get through a lot of content and things like that. It's hard for people to write things sometimes. Whereas the AI, because it's just a machine, is generating responses that are, of a length of a sentence or two, and they're all of kind of consistent and decent, pretty high quality in terms of what it's writing regarding what's in there. So those are the 3 key advantages that we see to the AI, using AI in Performer. And we do see a couple of disadvantages too that I want to point out. And one of them is there is a second kind of learning opportunity that's available in the peer review piece, which is when you're reviewing your peers, you get a chance to hear what they did that maybe was better than what you did, and also hear examples of things that they didn't do that you did. And it gives sort of deeper thought regarding sort of a range of responses that are out there. And that's another kind of learning that occurs that's kind of missing when you do the AI by itself. Now, what's interesting is it's possible to combine AI along with peer review. So you can have these both turned on simultaneously if you want to. But if you only use AI, as I did just today, then you'll miss the people learning from others' responses. And then the other thing that's sort of advantageous, I think, about the Performer style of peer review is that you often get multiple reviews. You'll get 2, 3 reviews from other people, and you'll get sort of a range of insights that vary. And I think those varying insights too can lead to sort of reflection for the learner and in more detail. Whereas, a single review is all you're going to be getting if you just have the AI turned on by itself. You don't get multiple reviews from it. So that's what's happening there. So I'm going to stop there for a second. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But what I want to do next here is show you a little bit about how these reviews are written and how to actually incorporate AI into Performer. Any questions or thoughts so far, though?
Yes, Michael, thank you. I love that presentation. Quick question. In reference to, you talk about the hesitancy of, peers, really giving an honest response. Have you all ever considered maybe the option of where the responses could be anonymous to the point of where the voices could be disguised? So you ever considered something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing to do, of course, as you're kind of noting, Lou, is you can do it where you don't use the video, you use audio only. That helps a little bit. And we could do something too where we thought about, we haven't implemented yet, where we can do it where you do some editing of the sound file so that it doesn't sound like the person. But a feature that we have available now in the new version of Performer that's available at all times is a transcript. So it'll automatically produce a transcript, and then that way, that's another way of making it anonymous. I think it's sort of nice to hear someone's voice in addition to reading a transcript. So maybe a combination of those could work. But if that's something that's useful to AT&T, that's something that we can get on our list here as a way of working with it. And that's a good point too, Lou, as well as you all primarily use without video. Is that right? You just use the audio clips.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, that's helpful to hear, and like it's actually, Lou, a good idea regarding, how to get to avoid this problem of people feeling uncomfortable sharing recordings with colleagues, and again
Right.
making it anonymous there.
Right. Not necessarily where that we're requesting at all. It was just an idea that popped in my mind looking through this presentation, which is great, and then just hearing some of the things you said. It's just an idea that popped in my mind. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike,
All
I'll
right.
just say I wrote down a couple things. First off, I love the transcripts. I think that's fantastic. The whole look and feel of version 3, awesome, huge improvement. Question I had is, as far as conversion, it's a little off topic, but conversion, would we lose any existing activities?
So when we switch you from version 2 to version 3, you can still keep version 2. So you don't need to move anything over to version 3 if you don't want to. And then so you won't lose anything that way. And what we recommend with this right now is that maybe you, if there are new things that you want to create, you can use V3 for it. And if you want some of the content migrated from version 2 to version 3, that's something else we can help you with if you like. But our plan for this for AT&T is to have both versions 2 and versions 3 available for you, and you can kind of keep them as long as you like for both of them.
Is it just different links then?
Yeah, exactly. Different links. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. The last question I had written down. And I also want to say I love the coach's example, because not only did they give coaching, but they also quoted, "You said this," which
Yeah.
they liked or didn't like, and that's huge, because as one of your advantages was it gives better feedback, right? Because we get a lot of sounded great, right? They just write sounded good.
Yeah, exactly. We get the same thing, that's an issue, right? Yeah, it's just and I get it too. I understand why people do that.
Right. They don't hurt feelings, right?
Yeah.
See, and then I think you're about to get into this. So I'm just thinking, like, whatever company is using this, right? We have our own requirements, right? Our own KPIs, right? We have to say AT&T, we have to brand AT&T. We have to say a statement such as an ownership statement, like, "I'd be happy to help you with that," or "You got the right person, I'll be able to take." How does that feed into the AI? Would that be like a scorecard we would have to provide?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can show that. I'll use that as sort of an example when I show you how this gets built. I think that's a great segue into this next section, Tim. But before I do that, are there any other questions you had? All right, I'll leave it at that then. And what I want to do is show you how this gets built for creating an AI-based version. And so I'm going to log in here and this is the admin section where we're creating content. So, as you know from Performer V2, oh, I'm sorry. Did somebody? Anyway, for Performer V2, what you have kind of 3 parts to the platform. There's the learner side where they're interacting with the simulation. There's the facilitator side that's running an event, and I know many of you do that already, right, with the existing tool. And then the last bit is the authoring piece where you can kind of create new content. And right now I'm logged in as an author, and I've got this SBI feedback practice that has exercises in it. And so this is the content that was created for the AI piece of it. And I think what's interesting, what's kind of surprising about this is there's actually nothing in here that is specifically about AI. It's just building the normal content. So here we've got, this is the exercise that I ran first with Colleen. It's called Situation Behavior Impact. It's a single player exercise. You can see it has reviews in it and it has advice. So it's got those 2 pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this and show you how this works.
Before you go on, I did have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're doing a single player, which perfect. Can this also work with pair play?
Right now, it does not work with pair play. It's only available in single player. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So yeah, that's a good question.
Okay.
That's something for us to think about how that might work with pair play. But the challenge with pair play is we've got 2 voices happening simultaneously, and I'm not sure if the AI can distinguish between the 2 characters talking, with each other.
Got
But
it.
maybe we can do that. Maybe we can figure that out. That's a good idea. All right. So what we've done here, and also I'm kind of showing you a little bit more around how Performer v3 works. I'm not going to focus too much on all the v3 features, but we can definitely schedule a follow-up call with you all for creating new content using v3. But you can see here we have the title, we have a descriptive phrase of what this is, and then we wrote this thing here as found Colleen did not show up to work, and this is an explanation that's here. And then we've uploaded a video. And what we also did in this case is upload a transcript. So so before you saw a kind of an auto transcript generated by what I said, but here what we're doing is we're uploading the actual transcript. And that way we just ensure that there's no mistakes in it. You know, with the machine transcripting things, sometimes there's little things that come in here. And we also might want to eliminate some things that actually occurred in here, like if you have ums and ahs and so forth, like I had, you can remove them from the transcript because they're not needed. But anyway, those are the pieces that are going in here. Now, let's talk a little bit about the AI piece of this. The AI uses this content here. This gives context to the AI about what it's supposed to be evaluating. And so writing this carefully is going to make a big difference in the quality of the responses that come from AI. And so what it's doing here, it's giving the answer to the AI around the fact that she forgot to update her calendar and that the consequences were missed client calls and backlog of work. So this is where the AI learns that this is what matters, partly, or one of the little hooks or anchors that the AI uses for it. And then secondly, the AI also uses this transcript. So you can build these without doing those things. But the more you give it, the more you get, in terms of sort of accuracy and things like that emerge from it here too.
So that
Okay.
transcript, Michael, that transcript underneath there that you had highlighted, that's something that was put in originally?
Exactly. So what happened here is, this actor recorded this video, and then we used some kind of online tool, I think, to turn that audio portion of her clip into a transcript, and then did slight edits to it. I think we added the ellipses and things like little cleanup of it, and then we just uploaded that file. It's just a text file that was uploaded.
Okay, so if we were doing transcripts ahead of time, or storyboards, if you will, ahead of time, that would be something to insert.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, and then here what we have are, first off, advice. I'm going to go here. So there's sort of new features. Again, I'm not going to focus too much on this today, but there's a new kind of way of evaluating responses called flagging that might be interesting to you all in the future, but I'm going to skip that for today. But here we have this open, this area where we kind of explain what people should do when they're evaluating, in this situation, this situation behavior impact model. And you can see, sort of written responses with it, and also what not to do. And all of this is also used by the AI. So this is another piece that kind of gets where it learns a little bit about what you're trying to do with this and what, good and bad answers are and things like that. But you could write anything here. So long as it's a text-based content, it'll be able to kind of pick it up and figure it out from there. And then in addition, probably the most critical thing actually for doing the simplest form of using AI is to build these reviews. And what you can see here, this is a lot more sophisticated than we had in V2. We say, here are the reviews. And first off, there's a lot of different kinds of reviews that are available, and you can have any number of reviews in the tool. But what we have here is, the situation, did you describe that Colleen didn't show up for work? And then we have this not at all to clearly and succinctly explain. And then here we're putting in scores, and that's how that score was generated. You might remember the first one, I did perfectly, I guess. I gave myself a good score, and the AI gave me a good score too. And you can see, is based on this. So it's adding up these scores, based on, where I get on a scale of 1 to 5 on this thing. And so we list all these out here. And this also, I'm going to reinforce this in a minute by kind of getting to what we've learned so far about best practices for building this, which is for the AI to do a good job. The AI is really a non-expert, like a peer is, right? Like the AI is not a leadership expert. It's just a machine, sort of, right? And what we find works really well is, when you're writing questions, like what will happen is, there's somebody within AT&T, for example, on one of these things who's an expert on a topic of all the things that let's say a call center employee, for example, needs to do in order to do a good job. And there's an overall measure of success or goodness of, what did you do that was good? Or maybe there's different rubrics for it. And then that's based on a set of more like detailed observations about what the person did. Like, did they say, thank you for calling AT&T, or did you mention the company's name in there, right? Or something like that. And so the question that we want to ask in order to determine if a learner has done a good job is, would be something like, if I wanted to, I could add a new question in here, I create a new question, I could say, did the learner, or the, whatever the learner, doesn't matter, I could say here, say, use the words, AT&T in their greeting, or something like that. And then I could change this from linear to multiple choice, and I could say, yes, no, or something like that. And then and then I could say, if they did yes, they get 100 points, and if they did no, they get 0 points or something. And that's how I could add that question in here. And this is a question that, sorry, I probably need to put the quotes here too. This is a question that a peer could answer, and it's also a question that the AI can answer. It can figure out like if that phrase or that word was used in there. And similarly, you think about these questions here, like, did you describe the situation which show up unexpectedly in the first part of your response? Did they describe the actual observable behavior? All of these things are things that are, by simply, looking at what's going on, it can answer it. It's possible to produce a response that's scaled that way. But it's also kind of using the other material there to help with the written response and things like that. So that's what we'd suggest for that. So you can just kind of build these up one by one like this. I'm going to take this one back out since it's not really a part of this right now, but that's how we'd go about writing it.
What's the total amount of questions?
No limit. No, I mean, maybe there's a limit of like 100, or like at some point it becomes a burden for the learner. But I know the old one had a limit of, 4 questions. Now you can be any number of questions.
Okay. And the other thing I'm thinking,
Oh,
the
I'm
only
sorry,
other
go
thing
ahead.
I'm kind of, oh, sorry, Lou. The only thing I'm thinking of is what you talked about, the branding, or the AT&T part. So our questions are often, did the agent cover all parts of the greeting, right? So a lot of times we don't get as specific. What we need when it's a peer reviewing, right? They can pull the scorecard, if you will, and say, oh yeah, they hit that, and that, and we give them they did or they didn't, or they missed it and they slot them in the middle. Would we have to ask every single question? Because our greeting,
I mean, you don't have to, but but I think you'd be better off if you did it more explicitly. Like, again, one of the things that we'd recommend with this is that the more explicit you can be, the better the AI will be with it. And it's kind of, and what's interesting about it, I think a good way to think about it is, how good would a peer be in this as well? Like, if you say, did they do all parts of the greeting? Like, sometimes peers might get it wrong because they don't know all the parts themselves, or they might mess it up. And it's similar with the AI, I think, with that. So what I'd recommend for a question like that is to change it to a checkbox. And this is a new feature that we have in V3. We say, were these items covered in the message greeting? And then you say, like, for example, it said, mentions AT&T. It would say, for example, and I'm going to make this up. The rest of these I don't know, Tim, as you know, would say, ask how they're doing today.
Sure.
And Michael, can the AI pick up on when empathy, or pick up on tone?
Yeah, it can to some extent. And what we've seen in like it'll say things too, like, and in earlier when I was, preparing for today, this morning, as kind of going through this, I did one where I was a little bit more, sounded more upset with the second example, with my bad example. And it was like, this person, seems annoyed or whatever. It'll bring out tone-based things as well in a lot of cases.
Nice.
So it kind of depends on how it's framed. And then, those are other questions you can ask too. Did the person seem annoyed or what was the tone positive or something like that? And the AI will attempt to answer that question in the same way that a human would. Regarding if there are 5 or 6 points that need to be covered in a message greeting that AT&T has, and you want to make sure they're covered, I'd recommend doing it this way. And by the way, this is something that doesn't have to be done just for AI. It could be done for your peer reviews too, and it's a nice feature to add here. And then, what I would do is for every one of these, maybe give that person 100 points. So every one of these that is correct, that's kind of adding to the overall score that's available for the learner. And then that's going to help kind of generate that total and things.
Do you have to do the points?
You don't have to. You can leave the points out. And of course, if you don't include the points, then you don't get an overall score.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I love the checkbox. That's a great call. Yep.
And another thing that we do with these is you can see that some of them are required answers and some of them are optional. And we kind of have defaults set up for those as well. We tend to make the checkboxes optional, and also the free form text optional in here. But some of them will make required, and that's up to you too for setting it up. Again, that has less to do with the AI than more of the performer here. Okay, so that's what I want to, and what's interesting, again, like if you think about this, that's it. That's the whole thing. And you think about it, there's really nothing here that is AI specific. You're not doing any special tuning or anything like that. You're just setting up a regular exercise. And when you're finished with it, it'll evaluate. It'll evaluate it based on that. So let me go back to sort of our suggestions for techniques for writing AI exercises here. And we have kind of 5 main points here. The first one is the question should be written to be answered by peers, not experts. And what I mean by that is the question you want to ask in general are, what are specific observable things that are happening, and not like, did the person do a good job? Or, like the more explicit you can be about what you want to gauge people on, the better the answer will be. And, that actually applies, it's the same approach that we take when we're writing peer answers as we would with as AI answer or AI questions and things. Secondly, we're going to be specific. This is sort of related to question 1. For example, what did you observe? Again, an example of that. Did you use the name AT&T when, in the greeting, for example? Another thing to do, and again, this is sort of related to the peers thing, avoid confusing language. Like, don't say, did they not do this or something? Doing things like that can sometimes confuse humans and also can confuse the AI. There is no need to add free text. If you're only going to do AI, there's no need to add free text questions, because the AI always provides a text-based explanation. And that's something that's unique to the AI, right? So when you're doing like usually 1 to 5 scale questions and a human's answering or peers answering it, it's just going to be 1 to 5, and they don't have to write anything else. But the AI will always provide both their score and an explanation of why they scored it that way, which kind of helps, I think, make the score believable to the end user. And then finally, giving the AI more content to kind of anchor it or kind of hook into to comprehend what you want to do is helpful. So the most important thing is providing good survey questions, but also providing things like advice and transcripts is going to help the AI do a good job. Okay, we have about 15 minutes left. And what I want to do lastly here is show you a little bit about the facilitator side of things. And that's a part I know that lots of you work with already. And what we have now, I'm going to reset the sim that I just ran. You can see here's the 2 exercises that I completed here. And actually, one little piece here before I delete it, I can see reviews of what was done for the people, what they did overall and what those scores were and things like that for the different exercises, and also review results by exercise and by learner here to kind of see what's happened within that. So here, if I go into this, I can see the class average is 100% for the first one because there's only 1 person in the class. And I can view the response from the top person. And we also get these 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place responses. This can be nice for a facilitator, by the way, if you want to share responses in class. Say, imagine you have a workshop with 30 or 40 people in it. You're going to get, if you use the scoring that we built in, you're going to get a high score. And out of that, you're going to have 2, 3, 4 people that have the best scores in the class. And if you want to, you can share those. Say, hey, Pasquale did a really good job today, and I want to show what Pasquale did, and let's talk about why Pasquale's answer was so good. You know, so kind of calling out people that have been successful and giving them some kudos for their good work on it. So that's kind of a nice feature to have in here on that. But let me get back to just kind of building this from a facilitator perspective. So what I'm going to do here is go to the dashboard. I'm going to reset the simulation. So this is just clearing out all the answers right now. And, you know, this is asking me to type the word reset in here. This is kind of like V2. I think you're familiar with this because it's a big change. I'm going to delete all the data for all the users here. So I want to make sure that I really mean to do it. And I do in this case. And so what you would do when you're starting a new exercise with a workshop is you assign exercises. And you can, you know, select some of these or you know, all of them or whatever you want to do. You know, what I did for today, just to kind of do the same thing again, I had this one, and then I chose, I think, this one and this one. These were the ones I wanted, and I wanted them actually in a slightly different order, so I moved them around here, and I think this is the order that I wanted to do on today. Okay, and then in my class isn't very interesting. It's a class of one. Of course, in your classes, you would have many people in here, but we can kind of assign who's available. And then I want to assign the learner or learners that are going to be playing. And then, you know, I can say, do you have to play in a specific order? And then we have for single player exercises, the number of times that the person can practice their recording. You know, if they make mistakes, I allowed 3 for today. I did not use peer reviews. So normally you would have this turned on, right? You would have the peer reviews turned on here. But for today, what I did was I left that turned off. And instead, what I did was I said, generate AI reviews or performer coach. And that's it. So once I do that, I just turn on the feature that says, yes, I want to see performer coach or AI reviews. And I open up the simulation and it's ready to go. There's nothing else that you need to do in order to get this set up. All right. That's all I wanted to cover for today in terms of how it works. And like I said, as far as next steps go, there's a couple of things we can do. And one of the things is we can set you up with an instance of Performer v3 that, you know, has this feature available in it, and also lets you set up content in sort of more more sophisticated ways using a nicer AI, or pardon me, nicer interface, and also new features that are available throughout as well. And that's something in a separate meeting. I think in the future we can go through and explain more about how Performer works. But today we really wanted to focus on the AI content.
I love it. It's a huge time saver. A big pain point for us is often folks that do the exercise but don't hit the next button, right? And then the person's waiting to give feedback. And then, then the instructor's like, hold on, let me go see.
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't, right? This saves, I think, can save us some time. And then, but it causes a lot of frustration, right? Or people start exercises and leave the room and don't show up the next day, right? Little things like that. This solves a lot of that.
Yeah, and you know, in addition to the AI thing for doing that, we've done a lot with V3 to solve that problem too. We've recognized that as a major pain point where facilitators can kind of get stuck because people aren't completing stuff, or, you know, like you say, they leave or something like that. And so the new version of Performer v3 does a lot to kind of manage that as well, where it can do more things asynchronously and just let, you know, data build as it goes over time. And the other thing that's nice about the new version of Performer is it tries to match people who are actively doing content with one another. So if you have people who are dropping out, then it's not going to kind of force people that are, you know, to be matched with someone who's inactive right now. So that's, you know, again, nothing to do with AI, but sort of a useful feature of the new version. All right. Well, that's what I wanted to cover for today.